Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelist. I'm Will, and today we're going to keep the breakdowns rolling with episode 5 of the Legend of Vox Machina season 2. I've been doing breakdowns for every episode this season, so if you haven't seen those yet, definitely hit the channel and check those out. But if this is your first one, let me give a quick spoiler warning. If you have not seen the original campaign that this show is based on, aspects of this breakdown could spoil parts of the show. That being said, I will try to walk the line of explaining things without explicitly spoiling stuff. And if I do tread into explicit spoiler territory, I will throw up a threat level midnight sign. And all that means is that if you don't want it to be spoiled, mute until that sign goes away. With that being said, let's get into it. The episode opens on this gorgeous shot of Zephyra, which is the home of the Arashari, aka Keyleth. And in this flashback, we actually get to see a young Keyleth and her mother, Vilya. Now, Vilya is actually heading out on her Oramente, which is the same thing Keyleth is supposed to be doing in the present. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what that is, to put it simply, it is a quest that potential leaders of the tribe must embark on in order to master all four elements. And to do that, they must travel to all four tribes of Ashari across Exandria and essentially gain their blessing. So once they have done that and mastered all of the elements, they can return home and they are fit to lead. So here we have Vilya setting off on that. But we can see just how powerful she is because even before completing the Oramente, she displays a great grasp of all four of the elements. And you might be saying to yourself, this is very Avatar The Last Airbender. And you would be right because Keyleth has cited that Avatar is a massive inspiration for her character. And she has not been shy about how much she loves Korra as well. And the fun Easter egg here is that Janet Varney is actually the one playing Keyleth's mother, Vilya. And Janet was also the one who voiced Korra. So that was just a really fun casting. And I'm sure an incredible full circle moment for Keyleth. Also in this scene, we have Keyleth's father, Corin, played by Fred Tatasciore. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And he was also in Avatar, just as some smaller characters. But I do think he kind of looks like Uncle Iroh here, but that might just be me, wanting that to be the case. But anyway, this scene is just a great little opening vignette, which they've been doing a lot of this season. And, it comes back to play a little bit later with Keyleth's mother's words coming back to, help her in her time of need. And one final little Easter egg in this scene is that the young Keyleth is actually played by Sam Riegel's daughter. So it's funny to see them keep popping up. They're going to be the most tenured voice actors by the time this show's done. Alrighty, back in the present, we have Vox Machina setting up camp for the night. And this is just iconic D&D. When you're not near a town and you're out on the road and you got to sleep for the night, you got to set up camp. And, some people actually set up the physical camp, like we have Vax and Percy doing here, while other people go collect firewood and, maybe food for the night, like, Pike and Keyleth are doing. So just love to see this. And another aspect of this scene, this isn't really threat level midnight at all, but I'm going to throw it up there. So mute if you don't want to know a part of this season that's going to happen. But Vex is clearly being set up to look like a witch in this shot with her piece of wood that she's holding looking suspiciously like a wand. And of course, the broom is in the shot as well. Now, if you'll recall, if you saw the campaign, or if you're still just listening because you don't care about spoilers, the favor that Vex ends up owing Scanlan for him, giving her the magic word for the broom, ends up being that he buys her a hat and he wants her to wear it, and it's a witch's hat. So I think this is just kind of setting up for that because with the wand, the broom, the hat that's coming, he's just setting her up to be a witch. So I thought this was fun. And speaking of the broom, in this scene is the first one where Vex looks at it and sees the magic words. Now, these are obviously not literally letters, but they look suspiciously like gurns on the second half of it. Which, if you caught my earlier breakdowns, then you know that Gurn Blanston is the name of a character from the original campaign, a guest character played by Chris Hardwick. And his character Gurn was the original one that had this magical broom, and Vex ended up stealing it from him in the campaign. Now, in the show, he's clearly not going to be in it. They got the broom from Gilmore's. But I have to think with how closely that resembles GERN, that this has to be a subtle nod to that. So that's fun. Next up, we have an iconic scene from the original campaign, and that is Grog, Scanlan, and the outhouse. Now, there's no outhouse in the show, but this is indeed the scene. And I'm so glad they included this because this is a moment they had to include. It was so good in the original campaign. But, and don't get me wrong, the song Scanlan sings here that we get to hear more of during the credits is amazing. What can this man not do? But honestly, the scene does not do the original campaign justice. So, of course, I'm going to be sharing that here. I'll see you in a little bit.
I got all nervous when they mentioned a Goliath Cave, so I kind of need to go boom boom.
Should I play a song so no one can hear it?
Might help. Like stand guard outside the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little music.
Would you mind?
That's what I'm here for.
Can I go drop some audience?
And as you find, one of the few local kind of ramshackle outhouses, none are quite Goliath-sized, and it's an uncomfortable experience. But thank God you brought a bard along, or you would have woken up half the populace just going to bed. As Scanlan,
Nothing to see here, everybody. nothing to see here.
Okay.
Uncle.
Oh my gosh.
No.
The music's playing, right?
yeah,
It's just like a stall, just
yeah,
me.
yeah,
All right, can I take out Craven Edge?
yeah.
All right.
In the outhouse? Sorry, keep going.
Keep in mind how tight
It's
and
the palace. This is where all the best thoughts and conversations happen. I don't know how it is at your house.
Keep in mind how confined it is, okay?
Yeah.
And go.
I didn't know.
Sounds like a rough one in there, buddy.
As you see one of the wood boards splinter out the side for a second.
Yep, that's tacos.
You might want to play a bit louder or maybe take a few steps away. It's about to get violent.
No problem.
At that moment, you focus in as you can feel the blade itself grow cold in your fingertips. You can see what little bit of light that filters through the bright orangish red color that's coming from the sunset. You can see a reflection in the obsidian blade as a voice comes to your ear and says, "You fed me well."
Yeah, right, I did, right? I mean, we are really doing well. Question. So, when we were fighting that big Earthbreaker Groot-looking guy, he called you a dark weapon. Do you have feelings, and did that hurt them?
There's a brief pause before you hear this long drawn out,
Right, hold on. No, listen. Oh, and I take my thumb and I run it against the blade real quick.
okay. As you do, all of a sudden the voice goes,
Right, yep, sorry. Listen, so my question is, as much as I love opening up people to feed you, I kind of want to know, like, what's in it for you?
Grog, are you talking to your shit?
Yeah, no, you gotta let it know who's boss.
voice creeps in again this time. There is no feeling more terrifying than hunger, and I hunger forever. You help satiate that hunger. That is our arrangement. I give you the strength of those you cut down, and I feed upon them. If this is unsatisfactory, I can and have found others who are more willing to be part of this arrangement.
No, I'm a big fan, really. I mean, I am yoked out when I'm using you. It's fucking amazing. I mean, people are flying apart. It's like a dream. But listen, can you ever be full?
I've never been full before. Perhaps you're the one to find out.
I bet I am, actually. You're really lucky you found me. A lot of these other blokes, not even half the bad I am. But listen, so There's no, like, end game, just to be clear. You just want to drink and drink. Because I've seen the blood, right? And usually I wipe it off, but you, like, suck it in. And that's a little unsettling, I'm not gonna lie.
My hunger grows, but the air tarnishes my blade. Perhaps we can continue this conversation elsewhere.
Right, yeah. Probably improper. Well, look, I like the way you cut people open, so we'll continue this another time. And I'll sheave him.
As you sheathe, the last thing it says is, "Don't forget, I hunger always."
I like kick the door open. I'm like, if you're within 200 feet, back up!
No one's out here, Grog.
Oh,
It's just me. Are you all right?
yeah.
I heard you say something about blood.
Yeah, no, in my sweating, it was like a real workout, that one.
At some point you said, "Are you full?" Are you talking about? Did you fill it all the way
Yeah,
up?
look, the privy, you know, it was starting to give me bum a tickle.
Wow.
Yeah.
You topped it off.
Yeah, because, you know, you don't want to, like, dip in the muck. It's,
Foul.
Not at all.
yeah. Did you want to...
I think I'm good.
Are you sure?
I think
I warmed it up for you. It's, like, ready to go.
I love a good deuce, but not today. I think I'm
Fair enough. Well, I'm feeling so, like, vacated.
We should go get a bite.
I think you're right.
All right, let's go.
Hopefully that hits the same for people that didn't watch the campaign, because I know that was a little long, but such a good moment. Anyway, moving on back to reality, we've got Vax keeping watch as everyone else goes to sleep. Now, I mentioned this in an earlier breakdown, so I'm not going to fully go over it again here, but just iconic D&D stuff. Now, during this watch, he has another encounter and vision with the Raven Queen. Now, just a reminder, these visions did not happen in the original campaign, so they are exploring this relationship much deeper than they did in the campaign. So this is really interesting. And we get some shots of, the destruction that the dragons caused, which, just lots and lots of death, which the Matron of Ravens is the god of death. So what's interesting here is we get this door, and this is just amazing. Like, Titmouse, hats off to you. But the thing that it reminded me of was the door from Full Metal Alchemist, which, like, half the cast of Critical Role had a hand in. So I'm wondering if it was inspired by this. And I wonder if there's kind of a similar thematic, essence behind it, in that this door is kind of the door to knowledge in a way. And this shot is cool because you can see all the threads of fate kind of interwoven behind it. So I feel like this door is opening to, again, knowledge, or this new reality that Vax is having to accept, that he is kind of leaving behind existence in the way his mortal mind understands it. And as he opens the door, he once again sees the skeletal version of himself, and then several other ghastly figures. So I think this is, let me get my literary analysis hat on really quick, but I think this is, again, just him needing to come to terms with his own mortality, his own death, and just embracing this kind of new existence that he will ultimately undergo as the champion of the Raven Queen eventually. A lot of mumbo jumbo here, but I appreciate y'all, bearing with me as I ramble. But I think this is just a really cool artistic license to show the transition between, what Vax was and maybe still is, and what he is ultimately going to be. And those of you that have seen the campaign know more about kind of what I mean by that. One final piece of this that I forgot to mention is we also see Vax being unable to take off the Deathwalker's ward. That did not happen in the campaign. He was able to don and doff it whenever he wanted. But I think this is just playing into this whole theme of what I was just talking about in the last segment, of him needing to come to grips with this new reality, this deal that he's made. And until he does so, I don't think he's going to be able to take the armor off. Now, that being said, I don't know if there will be some moment where, like, he's fully embraced and accepted it and he is able to take the armor off then. I don't know if that's like an important moment to include in the show. But until then, it does beg the question, how's our boy going to the bathroom? All right, there's a couple of things to talk about in this next scene. First up, I love that we have Scanlan completely exhausted and out of breath as he's climbing up these rocks because he's a gnome. And, in this party of varying races, it's going to be much harder for the smaller gnomes to keep up with, the half elves and the Goliath. So just a love that they're paying attention to that type of detail. Next, we have Vex pulling out the broom in order to get Scanlan to inspect the magic words on it. And we get our answer to what this little haversack is that we've been wondering about. It is a mini bag of holding. It could even be the bag of holding which Vox Machina had, which all that is a refrigerated bag of holding. I don't think that this is it because why would she be keeping the broom there? So I think this is just, a haversack, a miniature bag of holding. And now we move on to him saying Volantir, the magic word. Now I looked this up to see if it, meant anything, and all I could find were like autocorrects for the word volunteer in various languages. So if this word means anything to anybody, definitely let me know in the comments. But the Easter egg here, and let me give a quick threat level midnight for campaign 1 and 2, kind of. So you're warned. The Easter egg here is one of the words Vex says when she's trying to guess what the word is Viridian. And Viridian is the name by which Keyleth's mother is going by in campaign 2. So I thought that was a fun little shout out, especially since, we got introduced to Keyleth's mother in this episode. Now, I won't say further than that, to keep a lid on the spoilers for anybody that continued to watch even when they don't know what I'm talking about. So we'll leave it there. Next up, we've got Keyleth wild shaping, and I just wanted to quickly comment on this if you weren't familiar with D&D or if you didn't see the original campaign, that Keyleth is not limited to just like one type of bird, like the one we saw earlier this season. This bird she's transforming into here is different. It's smaller and faster for the purposes of what she needs. And how it works in D&D is you can transform into any animal that you've seen before. Now, there are some rules and limitations to this, but we're not going to get into it here. And I just thought it was cool that they're showcasing this. They could have easily just used the same bird model from earlier, but they didn't. And when she arrives, she saves this little Ashari girl. And the Easter egg here is this is voiced by Amy Carrero, who was a guest on Critical Role. Well, she was on Critical Role Exandria Unlimited. She has not been on the Critical Role flagship show. But she also screams mother, which I don't really think this is an intended Easter egg, but I'm still going to shout it out for those of you that know. There's this kind of recurring bit between Amy and Liam O'Brien where they are Mother and Nancy. Now, Amy is actually Mother, so the fact that her character screams out Mother doesn't even really make sense for this to be an Easter egg, but I still wanted to point it out. Next up, we have Keyleth running into her father and seeing Serkonos, the leader of the Fire Ashari. Now, he is actually played by Robbie Daymond, another fan favorite guest character on Critical Role. He was in Exandria Unlimited with Amy Carrero, but he has also been in the main Critical Role campaign. So it's awesome to see him be a part of this show. Now, the show and the campaign diverge a little bit here, and I'll try to be brief. But in the original campaign, Keyleth and Vox Machina have come to the Fire Ashari before this moment, and Keyleth actually completes her Oramente, at least the Fire Ashari portion of her Oramente, and then, leaves, and then they come back later in this moment during the Chroma Conclave arc. So I really think it makes a lot of sense that they have just combined that for the show, because if they hadn't, then her Fire Ashari Oramente would have happened off screen, which isn't interesting. And the fact that, she comes and saves them by closing this portal is just a way more epic and interesting way to complete the, quote unquote trial for her Oramente. She's like really proving herself. So in the campaign, it was just like they had to fight some fire elementals. So this is way more epic. So I really like that they've kind of converged that here. And I'll speak a little bit more on, her completing this toward the end of the episode when it actually happens, but figured we would go ahead and mention it there. And I like the detail that on Serkonos' chest is seemingly a tattoo of a phoenix, which, Fire Ashari, phoenix, cool detail. Also, he's missing his arm, if you didn't notice, which also happened in the campaign. Next up, we get the return of Keema and Elora, and it was so good to see them. If you saw the original campaign, then you knew they weren't actually dead. And things have been shifted around. I'm not going to get into the weeds on exactly what's changed, but I've been wondering when they would show up again, so it's fun to see them here. And we also get the flashback of their original battle with Thordak. Now, I very briefly mentioned this in my first episode breakdown when I was talking about what I called the Ember Seed in Thordak's chest, but here is the Soul Anchor, which is what they use to trap him in the elemental plane of fire. So we get this flashback and we get to see this original battle. And a fun potential Easter egg here is that we get to see Keema and Elora's adventuring party, and we know a little bit about them from various campaign materials. So it is very possible that these other characters on the screen are the other members of their party. Potentially Cyrus Caldrum, Dola Lorien, and Gin Talavesh. There is also Drake Thunderbrand was part of their original party, but he was a dwarf, and I do not see any dwarfs in this shot. The other three that I just mentioned, though, actually died during the fight with Thordak, so maybe this is them. Next up, we get a quick Easter egg as Corin and Keyleth are walking toward the portal to close it. The little platform that they are standing on in the lava is actually the symbol for the Ashari people. Alrighty, a couple moments I want to touch on in this chaos before we move on, and mainly we get more foreshadowing between Grog, Pike, and Cravenedge. Now, if you haven't already seen all of the episodes that dropped this week, I'm not going to go further than that. Plus, I've already talked about it in previous breakdowns, so y'all know what I'm talking about. And they're doing such a good job in the show as a whole of planting these seeds for these developments and these moments that are going to pay off later. And, allow me to wax poetic on it right now, I guess. I commend them. Like this, they're turning hours and hours and hours of content that build up to these moments into a strong narrative thread in a 25-minute TV show that's going to end up being a couple hour long season, right? They're just doing it so well, and so I love this show. Anyway, also we get this moment, and this was from the trailer, so I'm sure everyone picked up on it, but Percy is like, I am very flammable, and this is just funny because he uses black powder, and that is explosive, which we kind of got a little hint at with Victor in the earlier episode. So I just love that joke. Moving on to here, we go to the climax of the episode where Keyleth enters the portal and just goes Super Saiyan. This part was so awesome. And the music in this scene really kicked it up to that next level. Neil Acree did so well. Every episode has an amazing score, but this one really resonated with me. There's a few things to touch on here. First, when Keyleth first enters the elemental plane of fire, she starts to catch fire, literally, and that's because in the elemental plane of fire, it's very hot, and you will start taking fire damage while you're there, unless you have prepared in various ways to deal with that. So her going from that to transforming into this fire elemental was so badass. The model they have for this is so awesome. I love that it still has the antlers, and transforming into an elemental is an ability that druids have in D&D, and this is something Keyleth did in the campaign. But the way they showed this and the way they decided to have her close the portal was just amazing. Truly hats off. So Keyleth blows everybody up, basically closes the portal and comes back out, and we have this moment where everyone is like, what the heck? And she's got the new DLC outfit on, which I love that touch. And I will comment one more piece on this a little bit later, but we have Vax hand her staff back, and he did the exact same thing in season 1, so I like this little callback to that moment. All right, next up, we've got the Keema Elora kiss. Now, this is just a nice payoff. They were together in the campaign, and thus far in the show, in season 1 and 2, there's been some subtle, or maybe not so subtle, hints that this was the case. So it's just nice to have it, fully out there in the open. Also, I mentioned the little favor between Vex and Scanlan earlier, so I'm not going to go over that again. But to kind of cement that, we have Trinket peeing on Scanlan. And Scanlan and Trinket have a complicated relationship, let's say, in the first campaign. They are not each other's biggest fan, so I like to see this fleshed out a little bit more. One thing I forgot to touch on in order was this moment with Keyleth and Elora, where she says,
We can certainly try.
that is an iconic line from the campaign, but don't take my word for it.
You can certainly try. 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 You can certainly try.
Yeah.
You can certainly try.
Y'all, I was so tempted to make this montage like 10 minutes long, but in service of getting the video out sometime this year, I decided to stop it there, but I hope you enjoyed it. Next up, we have Vex overhearing Keema and Elora, and I'm going to throw up a threat level midnight again just because this is quasi spoilers. It's really probably not worth it, but I'm just being safe. So they're talking about Singorn and it having bounced out. Now, Singorn is where Vex and Vax's father are from, so that's why it elicits this reaction from Vex. Now, in the campaign, Singorn bounced out by teleporting to the Feywild, which, as we know from the end of episode 6, that parts of Vox Machina have now traveled to the Feywild. So looks like we're going to run into Singorn whilst there. And I'm excited to see that. There's some great moments, but maybe we'll touch a little bit more on this in the next episode's breakdown, or maybe next week's episodes in general. But nice little bit of foreshadowing. Next up, we have this scene where Serkonos is performing this ceremony to officially commend Keyleth on passing the Fire Ashari portion of her Oramente. Now, earlier when she came out of the portal, I briefly mentioned her new clothes, but one other thing I wanted to touch on is that red gem that she now has in the center of her antler piece. This could be a nod to an item she received in the campaign when she completed her Fire Ashari Oramente, and that was the Sparkstone. Serkonos gave Keyleth the Sparkstone after completing her Oramente, just as a token of, her accomplishment. And what it did is it added fire damage to some of her attacks moving forward. Obviously, she had the gem as soon as she came out of the fire plane, and Serkonos didn't give it to her, but it still could be a nod to that same item. Also, Serkonos does give Vox Machina one final warning before they part ways, and that is that someone was disguised as an Ashari that came in and helped Thordak escape. So he is a proud, card-carrying member of Larkin Watch, and we need to keep our eyes out. Finally, to end the episode, we get a glimpse of Western, and we can see how the Goliath herd has been subjugated and are currently bringing offerings to Umbrasyl. Now, this is setting up a bunch of stuff in the future. This herd is the same one that Grog is from. I won't say more than that, but we get our first glimpse at Zanror, played by Abu Bakr Salim. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Hell of a voice. They've done so good on these, deep, gravelly characters. So I'm excited to see more from him. And we also get another glimpse of Ripley, which I mentioned briefly in the last episode. Her heading to Western at this moment is separate from what happened in the campaign. I will touch on this a little bit more at the end of next episode. I know I mentioned that last time, but bear with me. But basically what this is they're just converging two storylines to make it more seamless. And I think that's a great change. But, we have her making some sort of offering to Umbrasyl, which we know she was spying on Vox Machina in last episode. So clearly she is trading information here. Alrighty, y'all, just one more thing to touch on this episode, but before I do, let me give the quick YouTube spiel, even though I probably don't even need to with how much love you guys have been showing these videos. Thank you so much. But if you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave me a comment, let me know what I missed or what you enjoyed. And if you really like this content, consider giving us a subscribe. It really means a lot. And a special shout out to Lisa Colliet. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But while I was editing this video, I got the notification that we received a super thanks. I didn't even know what that was. But Lisa, thank you for being our first ever super thanks on the channel. I wanted to give you a special shout out. I really appreciate it. And other than that, y'all, don't forget, if you're a Critical Role fan, we also cover Critical Role Campaign 3, which is their current game that is ongoing. It just picked back up this last Thursday. We do a podcast every week discussing each episode and kind of diving into our theories and, just having a deep discussion on it. So that sounds something up your alley. Definitely check it out. We're on all podcast platforms and, of course, YouTube. Alrighty. That being said, let me dive into the last thing here. This episode is called Pass Through Fire for pretty obvious reasons, but this title was also inspired by the title of a campaign episode, Passed Through Fire. Now, without getting too much in the weeds on the differences between that episode and what's going on here, let me just say that the contents of that episode had nothing to do with what we saw in the show here. Like I mentioned in the show, they changed Keyless Oramente to be this same moment. And so this Passed Through Fire episode actually comes later in the campaign. But the title is still referring to Keyleth and kind of her going through, trials and tribulations and coming out the other side stronger. So if you didn't see the original campaign, this clip's not going to mean that much to you because it doesn't deal with what we saw in this episode. But I still wanted to share it because it's so good. And of course, those of you that saw the original campaign, I know you'll appreciate it. So I'm going to end the video with the clip. And just for a little context, if you didn't see the original campaign, this is a letter written by Patrick Rothfuss, who was a guest character on Critical Role. And he is writing to Keyleth. So enjoy, y'all, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, before I forget, this came for you, Keyleth.
What
A letter
now?
came?
A letter?
Letters. We got letters.
We had traders came in, parcel in your name. Don't know who it's from.
What did they look like?
How did they get through the invisible wall?
How did they know my name?
I don't know. They were sent from Western, I think it was.
Oh shit. Open that.
What is it? It's got something thick in it, which isn't.
Could be a seal.
Oh, gee.
Read the letter first.
Read the letter first.
It's in Marquesian.
It's long.
There's beauty pictures in it.
Keyleth, I write to let you and your companions know that the repair of Western is proceeding well. I will not bore you with the details. Suffice to say that our children are well fed and safe, our elderly and infirm are cared for and comfortable. Without the help of you and yours, this would not be the case. The folk in charge argue constantly, but that is to be expected. And it is no bad thing. They all want the same good things in different ways. I listen mostly and do what I can to make sure that they listen to each other. Without listening, nothing good can happen. The town... When I say the repair is going well, it is a hard thing for me to talk about. I am not a particularly clever man, and much of this is new to me. When you make a mistake with metal, you can melt things down and start afresh. It is irritating, and it costs in time and soot and sweat, but it can be done. There's a comfort in iron, knowing that a fresh start is always possible. But a city is not a sword. It is a living thing, and living things defy simple fixing. Roots cannot be reforged, they scar, and broken branches must be cut and sealed with tar, and this makes me angry, as it always has, and my anger has no place to go. It was easier when I was young. I could use my anger like a hammer against the world. I was so sure of myself, and my friends, and my rightness. I would hammer at the world, and breaking felt like making to me, and I was good at it. And while I was not wrong, neither was I entirely right. Nothing is simple. I do not work in wood. I am not brave enough for that. There is a comfort in iron, a promise of safety, a second chance if mistakes are made. But a city is more a forest than a sword. No, it needs more tending than that. Perhaps a city is like a garden, then. So these days, it seems I have become a gardener. I dig foundations in the earth. I sow rows of houses. I plan and plant. I watch the skies for rain and ruin. I cannot help but think that you would be better at this. But circumstance has put both of us in our own odd place. You are forced to be a hammer in the world, and my ungentle hands are learning how to tend a plot of land. We must do what we can do. Did you know that there are some seeds that cannot sprout unless they are first burned? A friend once told me that. She was a bookish sort. I think of gardening constantly these days. I wear your gift, and I think of you. And I think it is interesting that there are some living things that need to pass through fire before they flourish. I ramble. You have the heart of a gardener, and because of this, you think of consequence, and your current path pains you. I am not wise, and I do not give advice, but I have come to know a few things. Sometimes breaking is making. Even iron can start again, and there are many things that move through fire and find themselves much better for it afterward. I have enclosed a gift. Once it was a sword, but it has changed. It is a small thing and silly. Please forgive an old man for his foolishness. Still, I hope it brings you some small comfort. Kindly, Care.
What is it?
Holy shit.
What's the thing?
I don't know what to say.
Are you all right?
It was Care.
Is he proposing to you?
It's got branches on it.
It's quite beautiful.
Wow.
Does it say something?
I have passed through fire.
Wow. Motherfucker, that's cool.
God.